the original version of GoldenEye, in the multiplayer version, you can play as James Bond, you can play as Roger Moore, you can play as Timothy Dalton, you can play as Sean Connery, and you can play as Pierce Brosnan. And this was great because I got to model all 4 James Bonds. They all had slightly different tuxedos because Roger Moore had his white one. And the trouble was, even though this worked brilliantly and we all loved playing the version with the 4 Bonds, we couldn't get the licensing from Sean Connery. So once that fell through, that was it. It was nixed. So nobody got to play as Sean Connery, Timothy Dalton, Roger Moore because it wasn't licensed.
I guess I took the easy option of just removing the option to choose those characters, but the characters themselves were still there in the game. And again, through people's dedicated hacking efforts, they managed to uncover those characters.
So we had the memorial multiplayer service in the team afterwards. When we found it out, we were all sad, but we had to do it. And I think I played Tim Dalton, and I didn't win. That's all I remember of that. I can't remember who won, possibly Roger Moore.
We had written vodka on the side of the crates in Russian, and Nintendo noticed that and told us that we couldn't do that, so we had to change that.
We weren't allowed to have any other female characters apart from Xenia and the other main cast members. So although I did make Moonraker guards for that Moonraker level, the bonus level at the end, all the female ones were taken out because we couldn't shoot them.
All the cheats were mine. So they wanted to just put in cheat codes. They wanted to hold them back, release them to magazines. I'd been fixated my whole career on gameplay unlocks cool things. And if you're good, you should be able to unlock really cool things. So I wrote a big spec about how I wanted to have special unlocks in every level, and I decided, I pitched to them, hey, this level you should unlock this thing by doing this crazy goal. I picked which unlocks you got on each level. I had my test department come up with all the times that we would pick, to which led to the 2 minutes and 5 seconds on the facility on 00 Agent to unlock invincibility. That was very intentional. The facility we thought was the best level. Invincibility was the thing people wanted the most. So that was the one that we made was the hardest to get. We put it in a way that was discoverable because the runway, the third level, was probably our least favorite level. So we made a level that took most people a minute or two. We made the time like 7 minutes so that everybody who played the game the first time unlocked the first unlockable so that they could discover this feature of unlock. So that was another one of the things that I did for GoldenEye.
GoldenEye, Graham and Grant wrote the tunes for that, but I did manage to get a little bit of music on there. I did the elevator tunes, which was just a bit of fun really. I did it for a laugh and played it to Martin and Dave Doak. And they went, oh, we've got to use that, definitely. I think I did 2 tunes and they made it in. Originally called it Muzak, but then found out we weren't allowed to call it that because it's trademarked.
When the game was more robust and towards the end of the production cycle, and when NOA were involved, we started dealing with a chap called Ken Lobb, who was high up in their game development hierarchy, and had helped Rare ship Killer Instinct. He was a big champion of Rare. He was a whirlwind of a man, so enthusiastic, loved games, totally apparent, and we did him a huge disservice by labelling the loudest, most inaccurate gun after him. It was... I'm so sorry, Ken. I'm so sorry.
They used to call me Klob, so that's where the name came from. But where the name really came from was interesting. Again, these guys worked as hard as anybody else at Rare, so they were working 7 days a week. Now the game was really almost done. We'd already printed the manual, and we had this gun. It's called the Spider, S-P-Y-D-E-R. And legal at Nintendo was very fixated that none of these guns should look exactly like real guns. None of them should be named exactly like real guns, including, we had to call the Walther P7 the PP7, just kind of allude to that name, but we couldn't use the exact name. Like I said, literally we had printed the first run's manual. So we got these 800,000 manuals that if you bought the game on day one, open your manual, it'll say Spider. So legal gets a hold of Rare and me on a Friday. Bad news, the Spider has to change. It's got to change to another name. And it must change to a name that would pass worldwide trademark search. And we don't have time to do that. So pick a name that is very unique, that can't be stepping on anybody else's IP.
We needed a name that sounded vaguely Russian and Klob, like Kleb. There's a similarity there, so it's like, yeah, okay, it's great, let's do that. But it was a funny thing at the time that turned into something which just persisted for so many years. I'm so sorry.
In one-hit kills, it's the best gun in the game, so I'm happy. That pops through my head. It's also the first gun that, as far as I know, it's the first gun you could ever dual wield. So if you're familiar with the one-player game of GoldenEye, the snow level, you could pick up a second gun and it wouldn't drop. It sort of automatically would go into dual wielding, and that was kind of cool. So I was like, great, that's awesome, thank you. And here we are, 18 years later, and I still meet people that like, you're the Klob. Oh.
Following on from the first set visit of GoldenEye, we obviously got a few more people on board. And by the time we got to sort of like the end, and we were doing the sort of like multiplayer stuff in GoldenEye, there was hopefully, from our side, that we would go on and do Tomorrow Never Dies. And to that extent, some of the people who hadn't been on the GoldenEye set visit got to go to the Tomorrow Never Dies set, which was great, not me.
One day they came to us and said, do you want to go and see the new Bond film being filmed? And we all said yes. So we went down there and we saw a couple of scenes being filmed, and it was all pretty cool. And then we came back, and then we were told that we weren't making that game, so we need to come up with something new.
GoldenEye had reinvented the James Bond franchise, and the license for it just went astronomical. So I think, as far as I know, and this is just speculation, Nintendo just went, no, we're not paying for that. So that's when we moved on to Perfect Dark with our own IP.